Hi, I'm Christina Stanley, CEO of Fictionary. Today, we're going to talk about the inciting incident. The world of creative writing comes with a whole new vocabulary, and it can be overwhelming to try to figure out what all of these new words and phrases mean. If you're like me, definitions are good, but examples are better. Let me break this down for you in a way that will help you understand the inciting incident and using the inciting incident in a story. So let's talk about what the inciting incident is. In a three-act story structure, the inciting incident is the moment the protagonist's world changes in a dramatic way. It's the first beat of the story arc, the thing that kicks off the story. In the hero's journey, this would be called the call to adventure. Note that the actual event doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be meeting someone, or a police officer being assigned to a specific case, or it can be very dramatic, a murder, or the protagonist finding out they are not at all who they thought they were. An inciting incident can be caused by the protagonist, a choice they make, for instance, or it can be something that happens to them either deliberately or by chance. In any case, the protagonist's world is about to be turned upside down, and they are going to be forced out of their comfort zone. Let's look at where an inciting incident fits in a story. The inciting incident should be somewhere in the first 15% of the story. There needs to be some setup so we know the protagonist's world as it is before the upheaval, and so we understand their mindset, what is important to them, and why they act the way they do. The inciting incident is going to send the protagonist on both an external journey and an internal journey, which they will be fighting, so we need to know them in their comfortable status quo existence. Let's look at using inciting incidents. If you're a writer, you want to make sure your inciting incident follows some key parameters. The inciting incident needs to be, 1, something world-changing enough that you can write a whole book about it. Finding out that the car accident that killed your parents was murder, for example, or falling in love with that cute boy from the family that your parents hate. 2, the inciting incident must be written into the story as it happens. Don't have your inciting incident occur before the start of your story, as it won't have the same impact on your reader. 3, the inciting incident is something that actually affects your character's world. Playing hide and seek doesn't really work unless you happen to hide in a wardrobe that leads to another world. And 4, the inciting incident is something that raises a question for the reader. Who killed the protagonist's parents? What will happen to the protagonist in the new world? Now we'll move on to a few examples. So to really cement the idea of inciting incidents into your mind, let's look at some popular books and their inciting incidents. First up, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. In the setup, we see Harry in his normal world, living with his aunt and uncle and horrible cousin. Strange things start happening, but it's not until Hagrid shows up and tells Harry he's a wizard that Harry's world changes in a big way. Next, let's look at the Hunger Games. Katniss Everdeen is the provider for her family, taking care of her little sister Prim and their mother. When Prim's name is drawn for the games, Katniss volunteers in her place because she knows Prim would never survive. This starts her on the journey to not only survive the games, but to find a way to rebel against the system. Now we'll look at The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, one of my favorite childhood books. 4 siblings are sent away from London during the Second World War. One rainy day, Lucy hides in a wardrobe and wanders into Narnia. Eventually, all the children get to Narnia and have great adventures there, changing them in that world and in their own. In Romeo and Juliet, we know that the Montagues and Capulets are feuding, but Romeo and Juliet meet at the ball and fall in love at first sight. Needless to say, this changes the course of the story and their short lives in a dramatic way. Finally, we come to Twilight. Bella has moved to a new community to live with her father, and she becomes fascinated by a handsome boy named Edward. One day, Edward miraculously saves her from being crushed by a car, and Bella begins a journey to find out what Edward is, even as she falls in love with him. So here are some final thoughts on the inciting incident. Inciting incidents are vital to a story because they are what starts the journey the protagonist must take. This is what makes a story a story. But if you really want to use the inciting incident to its full potential, consider linking the inciting incident to the climax. For example, Harry Potter is a wizard, but the climax of the Philosopher's Stone, the battle when he keeps Voldemort from getting the stone, shows he's not just any wizard. Katniss's inciting incident in the Hunger Games is volunteering for the games, and the climax is her winning the games, although not in the way the reader expects. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The inciting incident is getting into Narnia, while the climax is defeating the White Witch and saving Narnia. In Twilight, the inciting incident is when Bella is saved by a good vampire, while in the climax, she's almost killed by a bad vampire. Now that you have the inciting incident definition in your toolbox, it's time to evaluate your story and see how you do.